have a reputation to keep up. So thank you for being here and taking the time to come and to contemplate what's happening in our country, what's happening in our state. And I hope that what I have to say here will resonate with you, that you'll feel the truth of it, and that it will motivate you to act and to do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do, that are good and that are right. Thanks, Wendy. So I want to know why you came. Why did you take time out of your day to come here today? Why did you just stay home and do whatever you normally do in the evening? Why did you come? Anybody want to tell us? Tell the group here. Hopefully we'll all be friends by the end that we're done, so we're not afraid. So right here and then right here.
I've seen, I'm from Minnesota originally, and I've seen insurgent campaigns become very successful in the form of a governor of Minnesota named Jesse Ventura, who was a long shot and who everybody laughed at. They said he has no chance. And as a former Air Force chaplain, I have some values that differ from the current Republican and Democratic parties. And I saw your campaign literature, and I was reminded of that insurgent campaign where people were lined up and excited, lined up in our local library for blocks, young kids, first-time voters, voting for something different. And I hope that's what you represent to the people of Idaho, which I call home now as a retired military officer, and I hope to see a change in Boise and in what governs and what constitutes a philosophy of government in this country back to its founding. That's all.
Thank you. Well said. Wendy, another fellow Minnesotan.
I know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I served an LDS mission in Minnesota too, so I'm familiar. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody? Oh, right here.
I'm here because I've been campaigning for you, giving out lots of cards.
Thank you very much.
By day and everything. And the first time I saw you was last October, a year ago. And I've been a fan ever since because you said the things that I needed to hear, that there's hope from what's going on in our state and in our nation.
Yeah, thank you.
And I wanted to be here if some of the people I invited showed up.
Bring some accountability. So, thank you. Right here.
I came to support you in the outtake of the current government that's in Idaho, the current corruption, and I base this upon your current actions in some of the other life adventures and how this ties into my current life. And I'm here to support you in however it is that I can, based upon the foundation of whom you are and whom you have shown this world to be.
Thank you. So the outtake of the current government, that's an interesting way to put it. I like it, I guess. I like it. Right?
So I don't know you. I'm undecided, and I've come to understand what your position is.
Good. Well, welcome, and thanks for coming, and I hope you're not the only one in the room that is fresh to what I'm going to say and that just simply wants to make a decision. And the one thing that I don't believe I'll do is change my message differently because I'm trying to appease to you. So you'll hopefully know who I am, and what I'm trying to stand for, so that you can make the decision that you want to make. Either way, whatever it is. Thank you for being here. All right. Unless there's any others. Okay, go ahead.
I moved here about 2 years ago and stuff from California. I just don't want to see Idaho turn into California. I see the corruption firsthand. We moved here because we have a young family, and I just don't want freedoms taken away and stuff, and watch the state go down like California is.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that quite a bit, hopefully, and really pinpoint happened there and what's happening here now, and see if we are secure, and if your move was the right move, if we maintain the path that we're going on now. So before that, I got a little exercise that I want to go through, and I feel it's necessary because I think it's very important that we get on the same page with what is liberty. It may seem very simple to ask that question, but I want you to, in your mind, ask yourself if you know what the definition of liberty is. Because I have to admit, it wasn't until I had spent almost a year in solitary confinement in federal prison that I really understood what liberty was. And then I had to test it, because we sing about it, we believe in it, we feel it. Our young men and women go off to war, and they many times lose their life for it. You see right here, this was just taken a couple days ago. I'm going to have to get that a little better for you to see. Those who gave their lives for freedom. So we believe that our young men and young women are going off and defending liberty and defending freedom and giving their lives for that. And if they're doing that, and if we believe that, then we should know what freedom is. We should know what liberty is. And so I want to ask you again, kind of your response of what you think liberty is. What is liberty? What is it? Go ahead.
There's a lot of people who say liberty is the freedom to do whatever you want. However, if you look at the writings of our founding fathers, when they established the Constitution, they said this government will not work unless there is a moral people. And so by a moral people who have a grounding in divinity, in the Almighty, and we don't have that in a lot of places. And they said without that our country's going to fall. And so with freedom comes responsibility.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. What else? Or what other and it doesn't, you don't have to be all right, or you don't, just give it your shot. What do you think liberty is? What are your thoughts right here?
Being able to do what you want, like he says, without interfering with the rights for other people to do what they want.
Yeah. So you've probably heard me a little bit talk about this. Yeah. So what I came to the conclusion with, and you're right, you can't just have liberty to do whatever you want. There's a moral bound on it. And I believe the definition of liberty is the ability to do whatever you want as long as you do not infringe upon another person's rights. And I didn't come to that definition lightly. I had to contemplate it in some very serious and peril times. And I believe that this is the correct definition of liberty. And then I began to, think, well, I better test this definition to see if it was right. I felt like it was right. I felt like, it was confirmed to me that it was right. And I thought, well, maybe I better get some authority behind it. So how about some authority like Thomas Paine? He's a pretty good authority on what liberty should be, right? One of our founders. Liberty is the power to do everything that does not interfere with the rights of others. Thus, the exercise of the natural rights of every individual has no limits save those that assure to other members of society the enjoyment of the same right. Is he not saying the same thing? I mean, he's saying it in a much more articulate way, but he's saying that liberty is the power to do everything that does not interfere with the rights of others. Now, how about Thomas Jefferson? Rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will, within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. I do not add within the limits of the law, because law is often but the tyrant's will, and always so when it violates the rights of the individual. So he's saying the same thing. That's unobstructed action according to our will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. And then he makes it very clear that the individual rights are superior to the law. That the law is sometimes often used by the tyrants to push their will. Or you may have term, man's law. And that is not unobstructed action according to our will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. So can we agree on that? That liberty is the ability to do whatever you want as long as you're not infringing upon another person's rights? Does anybody have a huge objection to that? Can we kind of move forward in our meeting with somewhat of that understanding? I believe that it's exactly the way Thomas Paine explained it, and also Thomas Jefferson explained it, and meaning that I believe that the founders understood the definition of liberty, and they believed that it was the ability to do whatever you want as long as you do not infringe upon another person's rights. So if we can move forward, then let's apply this to our lives. Like actually apply this definition. So freedom of worship. How would we apply that definition? Well, the ability to worship whatever you want, however you want, whenever you want, as long as you're not infringing upon another person's rights. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think that no matter how you worship, you're going to receive salvation. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that our country was founded on the idea that a person could choose whom and how and what they want to worship, and that they should be free to do that as long as they don't infringe upon somebody else's rights. So they can't, steal somebody's dog and go sacrifice it to their God. That wouldn't be freedom of worship. They can't force somebody else to worship with them. That's not right. But we believe, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, we believe that a person has a right to worship whomever, whatever, and however they want, as long as they're not infringing upon somebody else's rights. And our country was built upon that idea. What about the freedom of property? Right? To be able to do, so we're going to define it, to be able to do whatever you want with your property as long as you do not infringe upon your neighbor's rights. Are we losing that, right? It's almost gone. It's almost gone. Right? To be able to do what you want with your property as long as you do not infringe upon another person's rights. Now, why this exercise is so important, one, is it's important because we define liberty and then we understand it. And then, once we understand the true definition of liberty, then we can see when it's being lost. Right? And also we can see who is taking it. So, for example, the freedom to do whatever you want with your property as long as you're not infringing upon your neighbor's rights, we can see that is being lost because we understand the definition now. And we also can see in all of your minds, your thinking and your understanding who is taking that freedom. And so then we can now combat it. We can say, hey, look, I'm going to say it. The city's taking my freedom, my right to my property. The county is taking those, this, and you can be very specific of who is pushing that agenda. And then you can start combating it. Because freedom is the right to do whatever you want. And when it applies to property, with your property, as long as you do not infringe upon another person's rights. So what about the freedom to trade? Are we losing that? To be able to, we're going to define it, to be able to trade with whoever you want as long as you're not infringing upon another person's rights. Right? That is also being lost. See, our founders, and I'm going to prove it here in just a little bit, our founders believed that we should be free And they understood the term free and freedom to be the ability to do whatever you want, as long as you're not infringing upon somebody else's rights. And our laws and our Constitution and all of that were built upon that. Now I'm going to answer. Go ahead, but if you've got a comment.
It's a perfect example, freedom to trade. I don't know how many people here ever noticed. Go into a big box store, Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever. They have a plaque like this that has all their permissions, all their licenses. I was in Home Depot and there's like 20 or 30 of them. Department of Agriculture, City of Idaho Falls, Bonneville County, State of Idaho.
And all of them are saying,
that
all of them are saying, you can't trade with people in our area without our permission.
Exactly.
Well, it's not a right if you have to get permission. It's not a right if you have to get permission. So that is absolutely, and it wasn't very long ago that didn't happen. We think that, oh, it's always been that way. No, that's not always been that way. You know, we are losing the ability to trade with each other freely without having to get permission, or without having to pay somebody for that, or without being restricted on what we cannot trade. And we need to understand that liberty is being taken, because we sit very comfortably almost every day and think that we're free. And yet, we don't have freedom to our property. We don't have freedom to trade. We don't have freedom in many, many ways. And this is just a simple list here. So freedom is defined in that way. Now, you'll recognize this. This is a paragraph or a line out of the Declaration of Independence. And who was the author of the Declaration of Independence? Thomas Jefferson. So we just read his definition of liberty, right? And so there shouldn't be any question here of what he means when he says liberty. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So what is he saying? He's saying that all men are created equal, we are created, and we were given unalienable rights. And one of these are liberty, is liberty. And what is the definition of liberty according to Thomas Jefferson? It is unobstructed action according to our will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. Or in other words, the ability to do whatever you want, as long as you're not infringing upon your neighbor's or somebody else's rights. And so our founding documents, our nation was built upon the idea that you can do whatever you want as long as you do not infringe upon your neighbor's rights. It was built upon that. And then the Declaration of Independence, as you know, goes on to say, and I'm going to paraphrase, but basically it goes on to say that government was instituted or created by man, by us, to protect these rights. And that if it ever becomes offensive to those rights or stops becoming a mechanism to secure those rights, that it is our duty and our right to alter or abolish it, government. Because the whole purpose of government is to secure the right to do whatever you want as long as you do not infringe upon another person's rights. And if government stops doing that, then you can set up new guards and do what we have to do. Now, I hope we don't have to do that. Otherwise, I would be standing here running for governor if I wanted to abolish government. And I think that our founding structures we need to go back to it rather than trying to alter it. We need to alter, I guess, what we have because it's gone way off course. So let's. I hope that this exercise has been helpful in understanding what liberty is, and understanding what our nation was built upon, and understanding how we identify those who are taking it, and then that we will begin to act to secure it. I'm going to show you a video here of when I first announced. And there's some things in it that I think that I want you to hear. And so let's watch this and then I'll go from there. Idaho, to me, represents the best of what America was. Idaho was a conservative state with traditional family values, full of people of faith who carried guns, loved the Constitution, helped each other, and built businesses by the sweat of their own brow. Idaho is sliding down the path and ceasing to be the Idaho that we love. I don't want that to happen. And so I'm announcing now that I will be running as governor for the great state of Idaho. As governor, I will be implementing a plan and a platform to keep Idaho, Idaho. The Keep Idaho, Idaho plan will improve life, bring prosperity, empower and protect families, and secure the opportunity for happiness to every person living within the beautiful state of Idaho. I know how to win. My record and history demonstrates that I am willing to fight to the very end. Now it's your choice. May God bless the people of Idaho. May we live up to these blessings. May we keep Idaho a bastion of freedom and prosperity for years to come. May we be an example to the world of how to be free, of how to act, how to treat each other. And together, all of us together, may we keep Idaho, Idaho. Thank you, my friends. Thank you. How does that sound? Do we want to keep Idaho, Idaho?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about what's happening in Idaho. The beautiful state of Idaho, where we call home. You could turn that up a little bit, Wendy. I'm gonna. Oh, it's a little sensitive. That's perfect right there. Yeah, that's perfect. Because Idaho is in a battle for its conservative soul. And if you don't know that by now, I hope that what I'm about to show you will convince you that we are in a fatal battle. That we are in a battle right now, and if we do not fight it, if we do not understand it, if we don't begin uniting, we will lose this battle. And as it has been said here, many other states have lost this battle before. Now, just to kind of give you some facts here, Idaho is the fastest growing state in the United States, and it has been for quite some time. In fact, since 2015, approximately 248,000 people have moved to Idaho. That's nearly 20,000 more than the population of Boise. So imagine adding a city the size of Boise to your state every 10 years. Talk about a challenge, right? And that's what's happening right now in Idaho. And it's going to continue. There's no indication that it's going to slow down. And so it's a challenge that we have. And to make matters worse, approximately 36% of the people coming to Idaho are liberal-minded. And they want desperately to change the gem state conservative values into a more progressively woke place to live. And they're extremely active in doing this. And so, again, if we do not become active, if we do not start doing the things that we need to do as just conservatives or whatever we want to call it, God-fearing people, family, if we do not do that, begin to combat this, they will take our state. Now, with the Republicans controlling the Idaho Senate, House, and Governor's office for the past 26 years, you would think Idaho would be the most conservative state in the United States, but it's not. You can see here, other than just a few years, we've controlled the state, the Senate, the House, and the Governor's office. Actually, for the last 4 decades, the Republicans have. And so you have to ask the question, why haven't the conservative values that are espoused in the Republican platform Why haven't they been put forth in Idaho when we've had full control of the House, the Senate, and the governor's office for 3 to 4 decades? Why are we not in a better position than we are? And I'm going to hopefully shine a little light on that. Why are we fighting battles like this? Why do you look downtown Boise many times of the year and all the flag poles or the light poles are all flying rainbow flags? Not only is that contrary to most of the beliefs of people of Idaho, but it's using taxpayers' dollars on public property to espouse a theology, or at least, if you don't want to call it that, an ideology. Well, let me give you some facts. Governor Little, as a senator, was the only Idaho state representative to support gay marriage during the early 2000s. He even supported it when Bill and Hillary Clinton were not saying it back then. Now, also under his leadership, under Governor Little's leadership now, Idaho has increased its food stamps program by 24.2%. That's higher than any other state in the United States. He's also dumping millions of dollars into free government housing. And he is Idaho's budget, over 40%, or just under 40% of Idaho's budget goes to health and welfare, goes to welfare services. And I'll show you some statistics here in a little bit. So why is this important for you to know? Why would I be wanting to explain and share with you what is happening in Idaho kind of on these issues? And the reason for it is because state housing, government welfare, food stamps, free health care, and pushing the gay ideology have been the staple of the leftist leftist agenda for decades, right? If you know what the leftist is pushing, it's free housing, free food stamps, health care, free education, all government driven, and the gay ideology. That is their staple. That is their agenda. And no person has pushed that more in Idaho than Governor Brad Little. Now, it's no wonder Idaho is in a fatal battle for its conservative soul. Because Brad Little doesn't act alone. The leaders of the state, who have been primarily Republican for the last several decades, are right along with what Governor Little is doing. And what do? Every election, we go down there, we march down there, completely uninformed, and we say, well, he's got an R next to his name, he must be a conservative. Well, there's a difference between being a conservative and a Republican. They can be the same, but they also don't have to be the same. And we are being fooled. We are going down thinking that we can vote for the R, and these individuals know that we are thinking that we are the useful tools for them to stay in power. The useful fools are the useful tools, right? For them to stay in power, because they know that as long as they have an R next to their name, we'll go down there and we'll go vote for them, no matter what they do. And that is causing Idaho to slide down the path to become more like an Oregon or a California. And so we either wake up or we lose our state. Now, if that was all I had to tell you, I would, we could get over it, we could make a plan, and we could maybe move forward. But it's not. Because Idaho is not only the fastest growing state in the United States, with the most increase of welfare programs of all the other states, but during Brad Little's reign, Idaho is the first in a few more things. Idaho was the first state to arrest pastors for having church services outside during the whole COVID. The first state. Now, want to read something to you here. Let me get it out here. So, I'm going to read you the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Now, if you can recall, most of the states would not ratify the Constitution. They were very concerned about it creating what they just fought against. And they wouldn't ratify it until there was a Bill of Rights added to it, which is the first 10 amendments of our Constitution. And so that emphasizes how important the Bill of Rights were in getting the states to ratify the Constitution. And then the very first line of the very first amendment reads this: Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Meaning that it's off limits. The right to worship belongs to every person, and they should not be molested or restricted from worshiping. It's off limits, right? Now, if there was any question whether the Bill of Rights in the United States Constitution carried authority in Idaho, which I don't think there should be, I'm just saying if there was, then let's go to the Idaho Constitution. And let's go to Article 1, Section 4, so right at the beginning, again, showing that they were deeply concerned about this issue. And it says here, titled, Guarantee of Religious Liberties. It says, the exercise and enjoyment of religious faith and worship shall forever be guaranteed, and no person shall be denied any civil or political right, privilege, or capacity on account of his religious opinions. Again, meaning the state constitution says the government has no authority whatsoever to go and infringe upon somebody else's or someone's right to worship. And then, I don't know why they did it, but if you go back to the 19th section, clear at the back, there is some beautiful writing in here. And it's titled Religious Freedom Guaranteed. Now listen to this. It is ordained by the state of Idaho that perfect toleration of religious sentiment shall be secured. And no inhabitant of said state, that would be Idaho, shall ever be molested in person or property on account of his or her mode of religious worship. So, what do we have officers in Idaho arresting pastors for organizing church services?
Always trust in chariots.
Why do we have officers stripping the Bible out of the pastor's hands and put handcuffs on him and take him to jail in Idaho? I can't emphasize this enough. I cannot emphasize what is happening to Idaho, and that we would allow this to happen to be the first state in all the states to arrest a pastor for organizing a church service. And they even did it outside. They did it outside, and officers who take an oath to both of these constitutions, an oath to uphold, to sustain it against foreign and domestic enemies, to defend it, to defend the Constitution. And then they're blatantly going and doing this. Even after what I read to you, they're supposed to understand that. And they're doing this. Idaho was also the first state to arrest a mother for taking her children to the park in Meridian, Idaho. Idaho is also one of the first states to raid businesses and begin to prosecute the owners. Do you have a comment?
I do. Idaho police officer standards and trainings, along with the Bingham County current sheriff under felony prosecution, have zero respect for the Idaho Constitution, the United States Constitution, and it is also consuming my life as Bingham abused here in Bingham County. Thank you.
So, I mean, I'm giving you direct evidence of what's happening here in Idaho. What's the opposite of evidence? It's propaganda, right? And so I'm wanting you, as I go through here, I want you to decide whether I'm presenting you with propaganda or whether I'm presenting you with evidence. And then you can make your decision of how you're going to formulate that in your mind and what you're going to do with it. But Idaho was the first on many things that we should not have been the first on. And it is very concerning, and we have to ask ourselves, why are officers in Idaho acting this way? Why are they acting this way? And I think there's some pretty good evidence of why they're acting this way. If you go to the stay-at-home order, or the self-isolate order, it says right here, can everybody see that okay? Try to get it as clear as you can, but it says this order directs all individuals living in the state of Idaho to self-isolate at their place of residence. So this is the governor and the state of Idaho saying that we're telling you have to stay in your home. You can't come out without our permission. And I don't know about you, but I never give anybody authority to tell me whether I have to stay in my home. And I don't believe there's anything in the Constitution that authorizes any other person to tell us whether we can or cannot come out of our homes. Now, he goes in and he talks about restricting businesses, non-essential, that they have to close. And then number 4, prohibiting all non-essential gatherings of any number of individuals. And evidently that meant church. But wait a minute. I thought these were unalienable rights. What does it mean to alienate? It's just fine. It's just fine. Just leave it just like it is. What does it mean to alienate? Anybody? You have to separate, right? And so these rights are supposed to be unalienable, meaning they're not supposed to be separated. And yet somehow this order right here is saying that we can't go worship, even though our constitutions are very clear and we know that it is a right for us to be able to worship. So, go ahead.
I just know during the COVID, they kept telling us it was because of the emergency that it overrode everything else.
Did you believe that?
No.
Okay, I didn't either.
But that was their reasoning.
Who's they?
The governor, anyone that was in compliance.
Yeah.
And the legislature didn't stop the governor.
The legislature
from doing this
didn't stop
after
it.
X amount of time.
Yeah. You're right. Yes.
Thank you. Alan, it seems like this document goes on to cite Idaho code, and this seems to be a very difficult issue because the legislature will approve, pass, how you're going to put it, code, which in this case I'd say is unconstitutional. And so we have our courts, our jails, and our police departments, our sheriff's departments running on code rather than our Constitution. How do we approach that? It's a hard issue.
Can I push your question down just a little bit? Because I'm going to give you more evidence or propaganda. You get to decide. I'm going to give you more evidence or propaganda on what you're saying, and then hopefully I can answer your question. Because if you go to page 9, section 9 of this same order, it says here, the director requests that sheriffs and chiefs of police in the state of Idaho and Idaho State Police ensure compliance with and enforce this order. This was not an order of suggestion. This was an order of enforcement. And so then, did officers enforce the order? Absolutely they did. They arrested pastors, they arrested mothers, they prosecuted business owners, they arrested hundreds of people. Yes?
I was just going to say that in the heat of COVID, I was actually living in California at the time. One of the most ridiculous things that I saw was a statewide curfew was implemented to stop the spread of COVID. And I don't know if the idea was that COVID would spread faster after 10 p.m., but people weren't allowed out of their homes from 10 p.m. to, I can't remember what time in the morning. And I realized that was California, not Idaho. I think it's a very slippery slope, and it's a very easy path to go down, that when you start prioritizing things above your freedom and above your liberty, how quickly that can slide into something so ridiculous. as a curfew, which is something that they had in, some notorious, like, tyrannical rules, like Nazi Germany and other places like that.
Yeah, thank you. So I will point out, I got you. I will point out, it's not that Governor Little didn't try. He's actually ordering the individuals living in the state of Idaho to self-isolate at their place of residence. So he absolutely did try to do the very same thing that these other states like Washington, Oregon, California did, New York, and some of these other crazy places, right?
This translates to the federal overreach of so many things. The administrative state, unelected people making rules and regulations that will either cause me to lose everything I have or put me in jail.
Yeah. So he's nailing it right on the head, and I hope that we'll be able to talk about this. Now, I want to hear your comment, but I have to ask that you let me get through this too. But I want to hear.
Sure. I was just going to say that from my understanding, a lot of the reasons why he was like put over the barrel to do this was because of the federal money that he took. When you
say he, who are you talking about?
Little, yeah.
I just want to be clear with that.
Yeah. There were strings that came with that money that he got because he did the emergency declaration that said he had to put these things in place to get that funding.
Okay, so you're saying it. Now let's see if my propaganda or evidence backs with what you're saying, okay? So, now, I think it's pretty clear that we can answer why the officers of Idaho, not all of them, don't get me wrong, there were some that refused, there were sheriffs that refused, and I could honor them more for that. So, but why? And the reason why is because this man, right here, ordered him to. He ordered him to. And they chose to obey his order rather than to uphold their oath. And they violated their oath so that they can comply to his order. But make no mistake about it, it was because of his order. Now, he had lots of motivations. We're going to talk about those. But let's just go into our mind, and maybe some of you are. Let's ask the question, did Governor Little do it for the health and safety of the people of Idaho?
No.
Okay. Oh, but you're saying it. Now let's look at the evidence, okay? Let's look at the evidence. Because I agree with you, but let's look at the evidence. Who remembers the date that Governor Little put us in emergency status, Idaho emergency status? Well, it's March 13th, 2020, right? Now, remember that day, March 13th, 2020, because that happened to be the same day that President Trump announced that he was releasing $50 billion to states that were in emergency status on March 13th, the same day he put us in. But you might be saying, well, maybe we really were in emergency. Maybe Idaho really was an emergency. Well, the problem with that is the governor's own website on March 13, 2020 says that there was only one confirmed COVID case.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So he puts a state of almost 2 million people under emergency status, under emergency order on March 13th, and there's one confirmed COVID case. And it happens to be the same day that President Trump announced that $50 billion is going to be available for states that were in a state of emergency.
Where did they get the test? Because they weren't available.
Well, I know man, that's a whole other conversation, right? You must work in the health field, or at least be aware of it. So okay, here's some evidence, right? Now, do you remember what he did 12 days later? Because he put the state of Idaho in extreme state of emergency on March 25th. Extreme state of emergency. And remember, we're answering this question. What was motivating him? Was it the health and safety of the people of Idaho or something else? Because on March 25th, 2020, the same day he put us in extreme state of emergency, was also the same day that President Trump and Nancy Pelosi announced a $2 trillion federal stimulus deal for states that were in extreme state of emergency. And on that day, there was 136 unconfirmed cases. So no COVID deaths, half how can he claim that we were in an extreme state of emergency? Now, just remember, this is what he calls the emergency declarations. Okay? Now, to further look for evidence of what he was doing, let's just go to his own documents. All over his documents, in his proclamations and his orders, he's talking about how we're going to secure millions of dollars in funds. He's talking about President Trump issuing this money. Right down here, I want you to remember this, section 46601, because we're kind of getting into what your question is. Remember, this is the authority that he says he has to do what he's doing. Section 46601. Okay, remember that. Right here is a letter he wrote thanking President Trump for $1.25 billion and that they're going to do great things with it. Right here is very, very interesting. This is Executive Order 2020-07. And he says, whereas I issued a proclamation on March 13, 2020, declaring a state of emergency in the state of Idaho. Whereas I issued a proclamation on March 25, 2020, declaring a state of extreme emergency in Idaho. Whereas Congress has passed and President Trump has signed 3 legislative packages that provide state funding in response to COVID-19. Whereas I anticipate additional congressional action on a federal relief packages to states regarding COVID-19. So we put ourselves in emergency status and we're qualifying for this money. It's coming and more is coming, right? And then he says, this is the next page of this order. He says, now therefore, I, Brad Little, governor of the state of Idaho, do hereby order the creation of a COVID-19 Financially Advisory Committee comprised of members appointed by and serving at the pleasure of the governor. So what is he doing here? He's saying we're going to get all this money. We're going to get all this money, right? And I'm going to create a committee of my buddies, and that I appoint, and they're going to serve at my pleasure, and we're going to decide how the money is spent. Okay? Now, the last page says, for the coronavirus relief funds and other funds to be administered by the office of the governor. Well, who's supposed to administer the funds of the state? The legislature. Right? Well, he bypassed the legislature. And so that him and his buddies can take all these billions of dollars and that serve at his pleasure, and they can do whatever they want with it. Now, why is it that the legislature is supposed to administer the funds of the state? Why did our founders, why did our Constitution, why? It's the same on the federal level. Congress is supposed to administer the funds, and the president is supposed to put forth the law, right? Put forth what Congress. So why is it important that the legislature does it?
They're elected every 2 years, and so they're really close to the people. They have to keep being accountable to the people.
And they're our representatives, right? So they go up there, they represent us, they take our tax dollars up there, and they all fight and argue about how they're going to spend it. And it's all open, and there's 105 of them, and they're all going back and forth and deciding how they're going to best spend these funds. And it's all out in the open, so that that a small group of people do not get it to control it, so they can't hide it, so they can't line their own pockets, so they can't use it to keep themselves in power, and all of these things. And that's why it's done the way it's done. And so what did Governor Little do here? He just did the exact opposite. He just is acting in the direct opposition to what our founders set up to make sure that our funds are not misused and abused. Now,
Isn't that a dictator?
well, if you're saying that now, wait till I get to where I'm getting. Because you remember that 4601, the code section 46601, that he says he had the authority to do all these things with? Well, this is it. And if you read, remember, I'm giving you evidence. Title 46, Militia and Military Affairs, Chapter 6, Martial Law and Active Duty, 46601, Authority of the Governor. So what did he put the state of Idaho under? He put the state of Idaho, he put the people of Idaho under martial law. And he held on to that for over 700 days, 740 something days, if I haven't calculated that. He put us under martial law. Now, read here, section 2. During a period of state of extreme emergency, which he created, right? He created, there was no extreme emergency. He created it, he fabricated it. So during a period of state of extreme emergency, the governor shall have complete authority over all agencies of the state government, including all separate boards and commissions, and the right to exercise within the area all police power vested in the state. What did he do? I'm going to read it again.
He took
He took complete authority over all agencies of the government, including all separate boards and commissions, and the right to exercise within the area all police power vested in the state. What do we call that?
Dictator.
We call that a dictator.
Tyranny.
It's tyranny. So the founders' definition, at least some of the founders define tyranny as when all powers of the three branches of government are combined in one, under one branch. That is literally their definition of tyranny. And did he not do that? What form of government is this? This is a dictatorial form of government.
Question. So this says he has the authority when this emergency is declared. Does it state anywhere that the legislature has to declare it, or can he declare it himself?
Okay, that's really good questions, and that goes right along with. So there are some very strict rules that come along with this. And I just want to be very clear. The only reason why this is in here that I believe, either it's completely unconstitutional, or it is here so the governor can act immediately to secure our rights, not to use it to take away our rights, or to control money that shouldn't be controlled by him without the other branches of government, or to act in ways that are completely contrary to the Constitution or to the individual rights of each person. So he used it just opposite of what I believe it was designed for. But he still used it. And there's very strict rules. The rule is that if there is an extreme state of emergency and he can act by declaration to protect the people, say if there was an invasion or something, you couldn't get the legislature together, he can immediately say it's an extreme state of emergency, and he can immediately start mobilizing people to protect the people of Idaho. National Guard, whatever else that needs to be done to protect them. But it says that he can only hold this power for 30 days. And then if it was a real ongoing situation, he can extend it for another 30 days. But after that, he must relinquish the power back to the legislature. Well, he held us under it for over 2 years. 2 years.
Was that with the compliance of the legislature? They didn't.
Well, the legislature, you know what? The legislature's tried to convene because there's a law that says if he holds onto this power, that they shall convene on the 90th day. Well, they tried to do that. You know what the governor told him and the governor's office told the legislature? That they didn't have authority to assemble without the governor's permission. And the legislature believed it. So you got one branch of government that's supposed to be completely independent from the other, saying that we can't do what we need to do to take his power away unless he gives us permission.
How could they believe that if they know what their jobs are?
Don't ask me. I couldn't understand it either right here.
I was saying that it was quite astonishing to see the amount of people in the last bastion of this country in Idaho allowed to come and go through that. It was he elected himself as a king. Out of all the country, he said, "I am king for as long as I want," and he's still there.
Yep. But
Well, and what's even worse about it is that the judiciary branch joined in too with the attorney general doing a lot of this.
That's right.
And supporting him in his illegal edicts and things that he was doing. I mean, it's like
prosecuting,
No one stood up for us.
Yeah, I'm actually going to emphasize that here in just a little
And
bit.
Mr. Bundy, in May of 2021, the House passed 3 bills. The Senate passed 1 bill to put limitations on the governor on this. It passed unanimously, and he vetoed all 4.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
I thought that was so ridiculous, and you want to know why? Because the law says that they can convene on the 90th day and end the order at any time, it says. They do not need the governor's permission. But they chose, this is my absolute belief. They chose to go through the legislative process knowing that the governor was going to veto it in order to satisfy the people of Idaho rather than going through what the law says they have a power to do to end the order.
They were, yeah.
Now, I've got some evidence of that, and the reason why I say that, because when they got together to end, they were actually going to end the order when the governor called the special session. And he got the legislature together. You know what he said to them? He says, if you end the order, we won't get all these federal dollars that are coming. And he literally pled to them, do not end the order, or we will not get these federal dollars. And they said, oh yeah, well, Idaho needs these federal dollars. Now, remember, I'm still answering the question whether he did it for the health and safety of the people of Idaho or something else. And I want to show you some more evidence. Because March 8, 2022, so not very long ago, this year, Governor Little made some statements. And he said this. He said, the emergency declaration served as an administrative function to recoup FEMA dollars for a variety of needs throughout Idaho. He said, without the emergency declaration, we would not be able to provide historic tax relief. A step that's even more important now as gas prices and inflation soar. Without the emergency declaration, Idaho would not be the state with the strongest economy in the nation. So here he is openly saying now that, he is, he's to the tail end of the money. He's saying that the emergency declaration served as an administrative function to get federal dollars. So it wasn't there to protect the health and safety of the people of Idaho. It wasn't there. And he had pastors arrested, mothers arrested, hundreds of people arrested. He put thousands of businesses out of business, never to open their doors again. He terrorized the people of Idaho and turned the state upside down. Not because of their health and safety, as they lied and told us. He did it for FEMA dollars, for federal dollars. And then he's claiming, well, because of it, now we can now provide historic tax relief. We provide historic tax relief. And maybe you've seen this letter. Anybody received this letter? So he sent this letter out to hundreds of thousands of Idahoans right before the Republican primary. And he says here, this is Brad Little, he says, the economy of Idaho continues to blow past projections. We're leading the country in economic prosperity. We achieved historic tax relief for Idahoans for a second year in a row. We are returning your tax dollars with our record budget surplus. Now, what 2 years is he talking about when he says second year in a row? What 2 years is he talking about? Well, if you look up here, it's got 2022. This was at the beginning of 2022. So he's talking about 2020 and 2021. He's saying that during the dark months of COVID, when everybody was shut down, people weren't going to school, people weren't going to work, they weren't traveling, and the economy was completely stagnant, that somehow that he amassed a record budget surplus in Idaho. And because of that, now they can give you a tax relief back because they are so good at what they do and they manage the money of Idaho so well that we can give that back. Imagine this. Imagine a company, let's say you have shares in a company or whatever, and they shut down their business for a year. They stopped sales, but they still had all their expenses and they had their employees and they had all the expenses, the normal expenses. And then they come back and give you a report at the end of the year that they had the best financial gain ever in the history of the company. Would you not question that? wouldn't that bring you a lot of questioning and of what's really going on? It's really an insult to the intelligence of the people of Idaho. Now, I also find this kind of comical. He says that the emergency declaration, without the emergency declaration, would not be able to provide historic tax relief. And he says a step that's even more important now as gas prices and inflation soar. Well, what caused the inflation? We are in the middle of hyperinflation right now. We're losing our wealth from inflation. And what caused that inflation?
The money we got from the federal government.
Yeah, it's the money that was dumped into the states from the federal government. So he's saying that the very reason that caused the inflation is the reason that's going to benefit us now in Idaho.
I think you're missing a huge important line there too.
Okay.
Because the emergency declaration never violated or
Well, I'm getting there. You're getting ahead of yourself. Very, very important. I'm glad you caught it. I'm getting there. Okay. So this is what the Hill says. Adam 2 says the impact of the pandemic on the U.S. and global economy was catastrophic. Economic historian Adam Tooze characterized its impact as being the swiftest and most comprehensive contraction of global economic activity ever. So he's saying that during this period of time, 2020 and 2021, this was the swiftest and most comprehensive contraction of global economy ever, yet Governor Little is saying that in that same period of time, they amassed record budget surplus. Now, on to what else he is saying. After all of this, then he has the audacity to say this. I kept Idaho open, banned vaccine passports, never issued mandates for vaccines or masks. The emergency declaration never violated or restricted any rights of Idahoans, never put Idaho on lockdown, and never allowed for mandates for masks or vaccines.
It's related to point.
These are the facts. If they're the facts, then why are pastors getting arrested for having church services outside? Why is Sarah Brady being prosecuted still today by the state? I talked to her just Sunday, and her family's been under this for 2 years now, and they haven't been given a trial. She said that her legal bills are over $26,000 trying to fight this. If he didn't violate or restrict any rights of Idahoans, then why were businesses being raided and owners being prosecuted for not locking down? Why were hundreds of people arrested for going to school boards and city council meetings and so forth without masks? They were arrested. Why were thousands of people put out of business, never to reopen their doors? And remember, this was an enforcement order. It was not an order of suggestion. It was an order. Now, I hope that I have presented to you some evidence that you can, because I tried to back everything that I've said up here with evidence, so that you can determine for yourself what is the truth. And I believe that there is a much better way. I believe that the state of Idaho has great opportunities and has yet to meet its fullest potential. And I want to talk about that a little bit, but I first want to answer any questions that you have or hear your comments. Or let's talk, this could be about a policy that I'm proposing, or in my Keep Idaho plan. This could be about something about my history. Anything you want to ask, I'm willing to open up to it and try to answer it the best way I can.
Don't fool me. I'm going to take the devil's advocate.
Okay.
If the federal government is throwing money out, left and right, is it stupid or smart to they're giving free money?
Okay. I totally understand what you're saying, but I will tell you that there is never a dollar that the federal government gives without strings attached.
I agree, I'm just saying.
Well, I'm just saying too, you cannot take, one is, and I'll show you here, that's a great question. So, and I know you're playing devil's advocate, so, let's go here. I want to show you where Idaho gets its money from. Okay, so this is their graph, not mine. This is the Idaho government graph. So 43.2% comes from the general funds, income tax, and so forth. 20% comes from dedicated funds like fuel taxes and I think sales tax and so forth. Then 36.4% comes from the federal government. So we can't pay our own bills. And every single bit of that. So we're talking about $3.4 billion a year that comes from the federal government because we can't pay our own bills. And that is coming with heavy strings. This is not COVID money. Anybody know how much Governor Little's office got in COVID money over 2020 and 2021?
$17 billion.
$18.7 billion. That's over 2 times the annual state budget. That's how much he has taken.
The question is, where was that money spent?
So we know the controller did a really good job with the first $1.25 billion. And after that, there's just these big chunks of reporting, and that's it. Like, 18.2 billion here and that's it. And we have tried to understand where that money went. We haven't been able to do it, to know. So it's exactly why the legislature is supposed to administer the funds and not the office of the governor with literally a handful of his buddies. So anyway, hopefully I answered your question because it's not free. And we trade our liberties. We trade our liberties for federal money. And in fact, we sit here and wonder in these little towns, these beautiful, great little communities, and we go down to the schools and we wonder why they're teaching Common Core, why they're using Common Core, or why there's critical race theory inside these little towns. And I'll tell you why. Because the school board or the administrator or somebody went and got federal dollars. They went directly to the federal government for a grant or whatever it is, and the federal government gave it to them, but they said, if we're going to give you this money for your schools, that you have to follow our curriculum and our other administrative rules that we'll place upon you. And then we sit here and wonder why we can't seem to undo it. Well, it's a contractual agreement between the school board or the administrators and the United States government. And they took money for it. And we see this in our sheriff's departments. We see this in our cities. We see this in our state. The health districts, all of this. And that is why we are losing our liberty. It's one of the main reasons why we have to sever this flow of money coming from the federal government. Go ahead.
In your pamphlets and stuff, I agree with you, taking back the federal land. That would help alleviate a lot of this because right now a lot of that federal funds is payment in lieu of taxes. It's a bribe. They pay us off because of the forests and whatever, okay? But there's a cobalt mine going in here in central Idaho, not too far in the future. If we had the logging, we wouldn't have the fires. If we had the mining, we'd have the wealth and the jobs. And just the grazing fees, to graze cows, we could easily throw all that federal money right back in the face.
That's right. The red here is federally controlled land. The white is private property or state land. It's a major problem, and it is absolutely causing us to not be able to pay our own bills. We have to go back to the federal government because we can't pay our own bills and the reason why we can't is because of this. So while we're on that, I know you have a question. I'm not going to forget you, but I want to kind of emphasize a little bit on what was said here. I need to get out of this and show you some other things. I need to, let's see if I have, yeah. So here's a state map. Oops, let's get it a little bigger here. Why it's doing that.
Perfect.
Or here's the United States, okay? How do you like that? So 51% controlled west of the Colorado Rockies, federally controlled, and only 2.4% federally controlled east of the Colorado Rockies. And it is making it so the western states literally are becoming, well, they are like second-class states. Now, you may be asking yourself or kind of questioning whether what is the impacts of this and what is the motivation of the federal government and all that. Well, first of all, I want to show you, remember this view right here, right? Remember that map? Well, let's go to the fire map, the fire history of the United States. That look familiar? Isn't that interesting? Let's go to, let me show you where the fires are right now. As of a couple days ago, I pulled off their own maps. Interesting. Can you outline Idaho there? The whole place is on fire.
I can see it.
But look at that line of the Colorado Rockies and west. Where are all the fires? Where is the history of the fires, right? Now you might be asking, well, what's the motivation of the federal government? Are they trying to preserve our lands, and they're trying to, as they say, preserve it for the next generation? Or maybe this map right here of the gold mines and mercury mines might tell us something. Remember that line? Remember this right here? Right? What about uranium? What about, I could go on, I guess, but that's probably made my point. So, this control of the land and resources in the state of Idaho and in the western states is a big problem. It is a big problem. And we have to face this problem because it's causing us not only to not be able to pay our own bills, but it's also causing us to, what's all this white property? Remember, that's private property, but why is it all the little curves and everything? Why isn't it in like squares? Why isn't it all blocked out? Anybody know? What is this white area? Why is it that way? What's that? Well, yeah, that's a little indicator, right? Part of it, right? It's agricultural land. It's farming, agriculture. And what happened was the West was developed where people just came out and they claimed the land. And they began development farms, right? And then the state appropriated it to them when the state became a state, and it was titled to them. And what happened was no one went out in these other areas and claimed it because it wasn't that useful to them. And the federal government in the 60s, 1960s, and 70s, they came in and claimed it. Not the 1800s, the 1900s. They came in and claimed it on top of us. And so now we're all fighting over this agricultural land. We're trying to, preserve it, but we're also building houses on it. And we're destroying our number one industry right now by building houses on it. And you can't get that back. And why are we not able to build in the hills and the areas around? Why are we not able to preserve our agricultural land? Because of this. Because we're being landlocked.
I call it the King's land. And
King's
you
land,
can't do
yeah.
anything with it unless they have permission to use. But the 39% is where we all have to live, and that increases property prices.
That's right.
Because there's a limited
That's
amount.
right.
And we got more and more people moving in to live on that limited amount.
That's right. So, number two problem. Now, number three with this situation is that it's causing our affordable housing crisis, and you just hit on it a little bit. But not only that, I got right here and then right here. I got you. Not only that is we're not able to harvest our own forests. We're not able to mine and build our own building materials. I've got a buddy up in Bonner's Ferry. If you've ever been up there, it's just heavily wooded, beautiful forest, just thick forest. And I just showed you how it's all burning up. And he went down to the lumber store to get some lumber to repair one of his outbuildings. And he had to buy just a small amount of lumber, and it cost an outrageous amount. And they told him that it was lumber that was shipped out of Canada because they get it cheaper out of Canada when they're living in some of the finest, most heavy wooded forests in the United States. But because we can't harvest it, it burns up. And because of the restrictions and regulations, we have to get lumber out of Canada. The cobalt story is the exact same way. They're leasing, the federal government is leasing the cobalt mines to an Australian mining company, cutting the people of Idaho out of it. So why do I present these? I'm not presenting so much a problem here. I'm telling you what I plan on fighting, what I'm planning on doing. Because I'm here, you came here to listen to me, and it may look like I'm just presenting problems. And I have done quite a bit of that. I've showed you quite a bit of that. But when I'm talking about things like this, I am talking about fighting this as a governor with a good attorney general, with a good team, going and challenging the federal government and taking it all the way to the Supreme Court. And winning these battles. That's what I'm talking about. So that the people of Idaho can pay their own bills. We can have all this opportunity so that we can repair the affordable housing crisis. The next generation, our children, I have a daughter who's 20 years old. She's been married for a little over a year. They're expecting. And it won't be long and they're looking for a home. They're looking at the reality of never being able to own a home in Idaho. Unless they are the exception. Because the wages do not match the home prices. And we have to do something about it. We cannot put our next generation in the circumstance where they can't own their own home, and then we just sit back in our own homes and say, oh, this is really good for us. These are problems that I intend on fighting and solutions that I intend on bringing to Idaho. Oh, hang on one second. Hang on, hold that, because I got to go right here first. And then right here.
I'm just saying, this problem here is, I'm seeing it all over the whole world. There's a book I'm just listening to. It's called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Yeah. And the whole world's trying to grab the resources, and corporations control or governments control. They don't want the people to control their own resources, because that makes them freer. And
yeah, I've read that book. Good book. So, just building on that, the founders believed exactly opposite. They believed that power, I got you. They believed that power, especially the land and resources, because that's where all wealth comes from. They believed that it should be distributed among all the people so that it's not consolidated and abused and used to control the people. They believed that with everything, even our government. They believed that our government shouldn't be consolidated, it should be spread out, and that every person should have a voice in it, so that that power cannot be abused. Because the best way to take something that's so powerful and so could be manipulated to be so dangerous is to spread it out and distribute it so it can't be consolidated to hurt the people. That was their theory. They understood that. And that's what our laws were based upon, that these rights of property and resources, they were supposed to belong to the people and be available to the people.
I was going to ask you a few questions back. Who is it that you support in the Attorney General replacement, in addition to the Deputy Attorney Generals that all have blood on their hands, in addition to the Idaho Judicial Council that has that same pattern?
So I don't know about deputies because I don't have that much information on any of them. But I do support Raul Labrador.
Labrador?
Raul Labrador.
You know, I assumed, but don't know, that the deputies can be appointed versus elected.
I'm not sure how they do that. I think they're appointed by the Attorney General, though. I know the judges are appointed through a process that the governor is involved in. But I think the Deputy Attorney Generals are directly under the Attorney General, and I'm pretty certain about that.
I believe in what you've experienced, that you understand that there's a significant problem under the leadership of Governor Leavitt that filters down through these mentioned individuals.
Yeah. So there's an entire culture that we need to change. We need to change the entire culture.
Thank you.
Of our bureaucracies to be beneficial to the people rather than be adversarial to them. Yeah.
So it's only supposed to be a little, they had no sales tax, no property tax. So what is the plan?
Sure.
Maybe everybody knows that.
I'm so glad you asked that. I was like, my finger was itching to like hit this little thing. So I am proposing to eliminate our property tax. And just to not get too much into it, but property tax basically deifies the state and basically saying that it owns everything. And you never really own your property. You never really own your property. You're just a renter. And to kind of give you some statistics, more people in the 1930s during the Depression lost their home because they couldn't pay their property tax than they did to the banks because they couldn't pay their mortgage. More people lost their homes to the state than to the banks. So it tells you how crucial and how important it is. Also, Karl Marx, the author of the Communist Manifesto, he said that communism can be summed up into a single sentence: the abolition of private property. If you don't have a private property, you cannot live, you cannot be comfortable, you cannot do the things you want to do, you cannot have that pursuit of happiness. And the American dream was to be able to come to America and own property and not be under the lords or the kings or somebody else as a serf. And we have now pushed that idea of the American dream and accepted and brought right in this feudal type system that we fled from and fought against. And so it's important that we get rid of it. And so our current property tax system right now, let's say we take a home valued at $400,000, which not very long ago was the average cost of the average home in Idaho. And so the property tax per year that was collected by the state was $2,000 to $3,000 depending on the county. And so in a 30-year period, that equals $60,000 to $90,000. The problem with our tax system, our current property tax system, as I mentioned, you pay on it your entire life and you never own it, right? So I am proposing that we replace it with a consumption tax system. And that would be, you take the same $400,000 home, and let's say we decide 5% that is due at the time of sale. So that $20,000 would be due at the time of sale. That could be rolled into the mortgage, just like we do when we impact it into our payments now, right? And that would, you might be saying, well, $20,000 is a far cry from the $60,000 to $90,000 that the state's receiving. However, you have to average in that the average home sells 3 to 5 times in a 30-year period, and so that would bring in $60,000 to $100,000 to the local governments for the legitimate purposes of government. And what's the difference between the two? So they're bringing in about the same. But the difference is once the mortgage is paid off, you own your home. You own your home. There's no more taxes. And so I believe that this is the system that we should go to. There are a couple of negatives that I like to bring out because I just want to bring it right out on the front. The one negative is that you would have to pay interest on the $20,000 if you rolled it into the mortgage. Okay, I think it's well worth it. But one of the positives, which is a huge positive, is that the county would now receive this money up front, so they could build roads and undergrounds and all of that when they receive an increase of people moving in or sales of housing, rather than going and getting huge bonds for 30, 40, 50 years and paying interest on it the entire time. So I think great question, and that is why I'm opposed to our current property tax system and why I will work with the legislature to try to replace it. So, yes?
So
So I love this idea. I saw it earlier, and I just am concerned about, do you have any ideas how you will protect that 5% from somebody who is governor in 10 years that isn't good?
So it would have to be legislated, meaning there would be like a cap. So I see like we go 5% cap, and then if the counties decided to do anything underneath it, they could do that, but it would be capped. And that's still dangerous. It's always dangerous when we are talking about, government and taxes and all of that. But we would definitely need to cap it so legislatively, so that it would be very hard for a county or somebody else to go beyond that cap. Yeah. So great question. What else? Right here.
How would that affect stuff like current mortgages and stuff? So if you ended up getting rid of property tax, how would that affect me?
So so I think, if I'm understanding your question, and tell me if I'm not, okay? So there's two pieces to that. Let me answer. So first of all, when you calculate your taxes, and then when you're getting a mortgage, they say, okay, this is what the payment's going to be, and they also include what the taxes are going to be, right? And they value that all. They say, okay, then what's your income? And they say, okay, you're within the parameters of us being comfortable with loaning you money. So that part is not going to change. Even with the $20,000 rolled into the mortgage, it's going to be about the same amount of money and all that. So that won't really change. Now, the other part is like, we're going to have to phase into this. And it's going to take about 5 to 7 years, to phase into it. And I say that because 2 terms is 8 years, and you really need to babysit this. You really need to make sure that, and so there would become a period of time, probably like 7 years, where everybody continues to pay their taxes just like normal, like right now, until that 7 years. But yet any new transactions are now doing it the new way, so that there's never any just flat cutting off, so that the county doesn't all of a sudden don't have any funds. And I think that's a very strategic and logical way to phase into this. And I think, it probably will take like 7 years to do that.
Okay.
And then we hopefully have the revenue that we need, and there's nothing wrong with the government tightening its belt. There's a tremendous amount of tightening the belt that we need to do, especially on the state level. But certainly even on the county level. So did that answer your question?
That did.
Okay, thank you. Great question.
Are there any other states that are doing a program like this?
No. I will say this. There are states that do this, but then they do the other property tax on top of it. So no. I do believe, though, that consumption tax or like a sales tax is the only moral way to tax. And I would like to see all our taxes go to, generated, or, all the revenue of the state generated by like a sales tax, which is a consumption tax, because then we're not like, if we decide, if we're in a situation where we stay home, we make our own food, we only go out and get the little things we need, we're not having to like just be extorted. I got you. Be extorted every turn. But if we decide we want a new car, or we want a new house, or we want this and that, then we pay the tax, and it funds the state, and it benefits the state, or it motivates the state for the proper purposes as well.
So how do we protect not only like our rights as people to buy a piece of property, pay a smaller amount of that 5% because we're buying land and we're not buying a house, so it's $50,000 to $60,000 rather than $500,000, and then we build our house out of pocket as we go. How do we protect our right to do that, but then still like assess taxes on that?
So actually, yeah, that's exactly right. You pay it. I believe that the building supplies sales tax should go to the same funds that this consumption tax would go to. So then, imagine that system, how free it is, how easy it is. You pay it on the time of purchase, And then if you build a home on it, then that sales tax for those building materials would go to the county. And there's no need to, at the end of it, be taxing it year after year after year. But great question, great question. And I mean, what a simple system and a way and a free way to fund legitimate government. I got you. It's just simple. It's simple and straightforward. Yeah.
So if I take my truck and trailer up to Bozeman, buy all my lumber, water heaters, toilets, no sales tax, bring it back and build that house on the property, how do we?
We already deal with that problem.
I'm sorry?
We already deal with that problem. I mean, the state.
No, but how do you, I mean, it's not fair to the system.
It's not fair now when we do that.
I know.
I get it. If we don't think it's fair, like there's always loopholes. There's always people going to cut, but you can't fix every problem, and you can't. What I'm proposing is a better idea, a better way to do it. There's going to be people that are going to try to sneak out of it and get out of it, and hopefully it doesn't become an issue. But it also is very important that we structure our our taxing and the protection of our private property. That we structure the government in involvement in that correctly.
Just to take it kind of full circle, we began talking about the founding fathers, and you said that they had to be a moral people for the system of checks and balances to work correctly in the way it is. I just as a brief aside, I sat in a debate a week ago up in Idaho Falls between Miranda Marquette, the Democrat running for state legislature, and Barbara Earhart. The Democratic candidate advocated for drag queens in public schools, pot legalization of drugs, and abortion until the point of delivery. Death, drugs, and drag queens. That is not a moral people, in my opinion. And I don't know, how you go about bringing morality into the public square in ways that people who steal from each other and violate the system of checks and balances will ever understand, and I'd like your comment on that.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. And I believe I have an answer to that. And then I'm going to talk about the 8 planks of the Keep Idaho plan and wrap this up, because I think we've got a great conversation here. And if you have a specific question you want to ask me, just come up and ask me. Because I really value your comment and value your question. Because I don't believe, although I might say that I would like to just drive the liberals out of Idaho, right? Just drive them right out, but it's not proper. It wouldn't be within the authority of a governor to do, and it would be wrong. Okay? However, there is a way. There is a way to do it. And that is, I just showed you the budget of Idaho. 40% of our budget is going to welfare. 40%. 40%. If we were to cut the majority of the welfare out, cut it out, push it back to the churches, back to the families, back to the communities, back to where it belongs and who is doing it the best, cut it out, we would see the highways headed out full of people that are heading out to Oregon to go get on the food stamp programs over there. Right? And we would immediately see the morale and the people of Idaho change completely. And then you end up with people that, there was a time, even in my life, I'm 47 years old, there was a time when I'm like, I do not mind paying taxes. But guess what? I absolutely despise it now, because I don't believe that it's going for a righteous purpose, and it's being wasted, and it's being used to actually destroy us. But once you get a government that is functioning in moral ways, have bounds, and then you get a people that are respecting that are not living off the government. Now we start to have this morality that you talked about at the beginning, and this morality, and you start to, really value government. And so anyway, that's my answer. I believe that this is another thing that must be done, because not only is it detrimental to all of us, 40%, we're talking about almost $4 billion a year. This isn't the federal welfare stuff either. This is just state. And so not only will this alleviate the families, just do the math. There's 1.8 million people, and if you divide that by 3, that gives you about your household. And then divide $4 billion into that. That's a lot of money that would go back to the people of Idaho, or wouldn't be taken out of the pockets of the people of Idaho. And we could do a tremendous amount of good with that. And then, not only that, this money right now is being used. Remember at the very beginning, I was saying that 36% of the people of Idaho are coming here that are liberal-minded, and they're trying to change Idaho into a more progressively woke place to live. Well, they're coming here, they're living off this. The rest of us are working, we're taking care of our families, we don't have a lot of extra time, and they have all the time in the world. And they're actively using our own money to pay for their living while they're trying to destroy our way of life. It is detrimental that we solve this problem. So, I hope I've given you a taste of what I'm about and what I'm planning on doing. I just want to quickly go through these planks, the 8 planks to the Keep Idaho, Idaho plan. Number 1, protect private property. 2, eliminate progressive taxes. 3, free Idaho from federal control. 4, make Idaho independent again. Did you know that Idaho hasn't paid its own bills for 38 years? We've had to go back to the federal government and pay our own bills for 38 years. 5, bring back the rule of law. Boy, do we need that. I could talk about personal stories about how that's affected me and my family. 6, make Idaho an economic powerhouse. They don't call Idaho the gem state for nothing. The Treasure Valley is not the Treasure Valley because it's poor. Right? I mean, we are resource rich. 7, secure the quality of life for every Idaho family. How do we do that? The state protects life, liberty, and property. And then we have the opportunity to have a quality life. Let's bring back the churches and the family unit. Let's make it so that our families can pay their own bills without both the mother and the father having to be gone for 40, 50, 60 hours out of the week. Let's get back to teaching our children and taking care of them and having the ability to have a little extra so while we do it. And then 8, make Idaho an example of peace and prosperity to the rest of the world. And boy, does it need it. The world needs an example. It needs an example of how to be free and what it brings. There was a time, and it wasn't very long ago, in the early 80s, did you know that countries all over the world were adopting our Constitution and implementing them? And now it's a full rejection of it. Idaho needs to be an example of applying principles of freedom and how a moral people apply them. And I promise you, if we do this, we will prosper, we will have peace, we will enjoy the blessings that the Lord has given us, and the rest of the world will envy us, and they'll start to follow. And so that's my Keep Idaho, Idaho plan. And I'm grateful for your time, grateful for your questions, and so thank you very much.
chairman typically ends the meeting with 2 or 3 things that, people can do to help. And Emma, can you give us the first 2 real quickly?
Okay, I gotta have your attention again, because this is an important part. I'm asking you to do 3 things. 1, I'm asking you to take a yard sign and put it in your front yard. Because all of a sudden you're going to have all these conversations with your neighbors, and you're going to be able to guide them to votebunny.com and these principles and truths that I shared to you. If you go to Vote Bundy, they're all over. They're there. So, number 1, asking you to take a yard sign. Don't be afraid. You can't be afraid. 2, I'm asking you to subscribe to votebundy.com. To go on, and no one likes another email coming to them, but we'll treat your email properly, but we're going to send you information you're going to be able to send on to your friends and your family that's going to help them understand these things. Videos, documents, articles. So votebundy.com and subscribe to the email. And then 3, open up your wallet and donate to our campaign, because it is not easy to spread this message. It costs a lot of money. So 3 things: take a sign, put it in your front yard, subscribe to votebundy.com, and donate to the campaign. Thank you.